Every day I wake up, I says, I love you and I choose you and I sign and I date it. I see myself in the mirror when I do this because, you can love yourself maybe unconditionally or maybe when you're skinny or whatever else, or when you get the promotion. But choosing you as a daily practice is so, so different, so profound, and so beautiful.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudy and Aniston, and this is Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudy Ricksteins. I'm your host, and I'm excited to introduce you today to Olivia Young. Olivia is an incredible human being who has had a full, robust life with tremendous life experience. And as we believe in the Empowered Life Podcast, is that every single moment is always perfectly, carefully, divinely orchestrated to prepare you for who it is that you get to become, how you get to serve, and how you get to turn around and teach people through what has been your story and through your journey. And for no person is this more true than it is for Olivia. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so insanely grateful to have you on this platform. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast.
Thank you so much. That intro, my gosh, speaking to my heart and my soul. Thank you.
You and I are going to be kindred spirits. I'm so disappointed that Aniston, my wife and co-host, is not on the episode to join us today because she would just love you so much. We believe every moment is always this moment that's preparing you for who you get to be and for how you get to show up. We named the podcast The Empowered Life because we believe everything that you want to have, to be, to do, to achieve already resides within you. And then I get the opportunity to have a conversation with you, and in learning about you, all the terminology that is so near and dear to both Aniston and myself is all over your page. And it just speaks into who you are and how you get to show up. So I'd love to start the episode today, if you don't mind, by asking you, what does it mean to you to live an empowered life?
So just hearing that, I have lived many lives, and not just in this physical body, but, many lives. And in this one, my background was like French culinary school, chefs, and then I started this fitness concept, and the doors of my fitness studios said everything you need is inside. And the fitness concept was a boxing yoga hybrid, all about facing the internal fight to find your flow. So no mirrors, literally like giving people the opportunity to figure out what was going on inside, to recognize that they had both their tools and their answers. And so when you say, what does empowered life mean to me? We are self-sourcing humans. And, in this reality that we live in, we so often seek outside of self for validation, for answer, for understanding, when the power is everything. It is all within. And I also believe as much as we are empowered, we are disempowered because we take our own power away, and instead of looking at the reasons and blaming why we feel a certain way, there is something so powerful about taking full responsibility for this experience that is in real time.
You so beautifully have underscored where I really want to take the episode today, and that is, through how we have this internal power, but we so often forget we have the power, or we disconnect from the power, or in so many instances, we just give it all away. You started talking about you opening up your studios in New York City. I'm very familiar with your story, and I would love for you just to bring our audience in a little bit, because you took a leap of faith, leaving a very successful career, and then you decided you wanted to open up these studios and sign a lease. You've never given a training before. You open it, you jump in, and then COVID hits and everything shuts down. And yet it was the perfect nurturing, because it was the catalyst for the growth and the change that you were about to experience. Bring us in a little bit on that story for anyone who hasn't heard your story.
Whenever I share this, I opened my second studio, 3,000 square feet, heart of Soho, my dream space after having my first studio was like a dungeon, 1,500 square feet, second floor, painted the walls, hung bags up, never taught a class before, but all divinity, all magic. And then I was walking this path of like bigger and better and external and Instagrammable. And my second studio was open 3 weeks before COVID shut down. And when I tell that story, almost everyone says like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I say, thank you, Anne. It was the greatest gift I was given, because shutting down gave me the opportunity to open. And in many ways, it saved my life. So at that point, everything was stuck. So the world was shut down. My business was closed. And it gave me the first opportunity to be like, why is nothing working? My relationships were failing. I believe, what's going on outside of us is a reflection of what's going on inside of us. Mm-hmm. And the relationship I was in at the time, it was forced and it was comfortable. And it was also just like it was like the same dragon in a different outfit, like the same guy wearing the different costume, same pattern. And we were dating, and the first time we were intimate, he said to me, did something happen to you? And I was like, what do you mean? And so his question sparked this, did something happen to me? Because basically when we were intimate, I left the room. I dissociated from my body, and my studio's closed. This question was like, put on me. And for the first time in my life, I had to like kind of go inside and be like, what does that mean? Why was I dissociated from everything? And so I started like, getting involved with plant medicine, psychedelics, all these other healing modalities to like break me wide open, because I was living externally. So I had the perfect studio. I had the perfect job. I had the perfect pedigree. I had the perfect everything. External, everything looked good. Inside, I was broken. I was completely disintegrated. So I went on this 2.5-year journey of finding all of these tools and answers, and basically uncovering like 30 years of subconscious sexual assault from my history that I had absolutely no recollection, no memory of. So the irony, if you will, is that like I was speaking and healing others to face their fight, to find their flow, but I had no idea what I was fighting. So in a way, I started living my life in reverse to find out like what was inside of me that was creating all of this agita. And similarly, I didn't realize it was agita. I didn't realize I was like constantly anxious, borderline depressed, because it was my baseline. For as long as I remembered, inside was my operating system. And I like to find the positive and the gift. That disintegration, that anxiety, that fuel, that fire was like led me to sign a lease before ever having taught a class, which was like what led me to put on the gloves and get in the ring, was what, gave me the gall to become, brand director of a global hospitality company, working with celebrity chefs when I was 23 years old. So that fire propelled me, but it got to the point in my life when this break was of like shut down and like, did something happen to you, for me to be like, I can no longer go any further than I've been going, operating this way, out of my heart, out of my body.
What's so crazy is that you and I have such similar experiences, and we have so many parallels on so many levels. But one of them was I was sexually abused by an older female cousin when I was around 6 years old. And I buried that until I was in my 30s, and I was on a call with a female client who just broke down and had shared that she had been sexually assaulted, and I was one of the first people she had told, and it had been for a number of years, and was a family member. And in her sharing, it allowed that emotion to come up and come through and come out of me. And I had a healing in a moment of trying to support somebody and having a healing for themselves. And so when I had the opportunity to have you on the Empowered Life podcast, I jumped at the opportunity because I love the work that you're doing, and you're doing it in a way that I have never delved in. And I want to learn so much through this, and I want to extend your knowledge to our audience as an alternative to the work that I do, an alternative to how people can heal, and the need to be able to look at yourself, lose your ego, take back your power. And I want to be very clear when I say that every single experience that you have, I have, everybody that has, and it's the third time I'm saying it, and it's intentional, is that it's adding to the person we get to become. So many people have these disempowered moments or experiences, And, for me to have a form of trauma and for you to have tremendous trauma and then to bury that trauma for years later, for a single question to be the seed that opens the gap for the growth, and then you dove in for a period of 2 years, nobody would wish that level of pain on you. And I want you to talk a little bit about that in a few moments' time, just to give the audience some context for the tremendous volume of pain that you carried and the series of chronic experiences that followed. But what I want to do is, before we dive into the story, I really want to make sure that we're anchored into the power of who you've become because of it. And so many people have the big T traumas, they have little T traumas, they identify with them, they live in that space. You beautifully articulated that we identify that that's how we feel, so we stay there and that feels normal to us. But what happens is that if we give our power away, it's something happened to us and we feel victimized in that moment. But when we start to say, what is the value in that experience? And in yours, it was healing people. I didn't say it when we started the podcast episode today, as outwardly as I'm going to now, but you heal people from profound traumas. You give people the freedom, and you do it through a number of modalities. You do breath work, you do somatic breathing, you do somatic healing, you do psychedelics. You can just keep going. The list is so, so long. And I think that so many people have stopped at the pain and they've tried to bury the pain. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit, if you don't mind. What was the experience? How did it compound? And then what did you use to be able to free yourself into being the powerful, incredible woman that you are today?
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your experience. It's interesting, no matter how many times I hear someone else's story, it never gets easier. It makes me emotional just thinking about how much pain is just seeped into like the fabric of the lives that we live, and also honoring that it is a choice to stay in that pain, as you said, or to choose life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I was given this gift of not just life, but as you said, to heal and to hold and to allow people to alchemize their pain into their power. But it doesn't stop there for me. For me, it goes into reclaiming pleasure, because life is pleasure. Life is tasting food, is hearing music, is giving ourselves the permission to dance, to love, to connect. Because if we just stop at power, we forget that there is so much more available when we reclaim that which is our birthright, which is love. So for me, I can only take people where I've been, and I believe that we're only served what we can handle. And I got served. I got served again and again. So when I said I was asked this question, it was after I had lived this very external life with all the fixins, had it all, and was brought up with it all. I've never wanted for anything. And so much of my message is again, everything you need is inside. Well, I had all the things externally, but inside I was empty. And I worked with someone once, and she said, Olivia, what happens when a motel gets abandoned? And I was like, I don't know. She's like, all the mites crawl in. And my body was full of mites, was full of all the things, because I never lived in it. So I couldn't feel anything. So lived this external life and was holding people as I had been held. I found boxing when I was 20. I found yoga when I was 15. Boxing gave me strength and confidence, and yoga allowed me to slow down and feel. And I was like, this is it. I got to teach other people what I know. But I had no idea why. All I knew was that put people in a heavy bag for 9 rounds and just the only rule, never drop your hands, never give up on yourself. And as much as I was teaching others that, I was teaching myself that, because when my studios closed and I had nothing to hide behind, I had no business, I had no relationship, I had nothing external. My resume became blank again. The world shut down. I had to ask myself the question, who am I? And so all of a sudden, when I surrendered to opening, I'm stuck, please help, what do I do? I was it's as literal as it gets. I was getting a colonic, my body was stuck. The woman mentioned she smokes this toad, it's amazing. And I was like, okay, lady, you're crazy, but where do I get it? So I'd never done a recreational drug before except like have some fun in college smoking weed. And 5 days later, I was in Janis Joplin's old apartment in the Chelsea Hotel smoking 5-MeO DMT, which is called the God molecule, which is the tantamount. If you're listening to this, I don't advise I don't recommend plant medicine. I'm not here to tell you what to do in any way. I'm just sharing what I did. So basically, I went to meet God. I went to open up, to surrender, to like help. And in that like request and opening, I was just led. From that moment, I was just led. So that led me to another ceremony 5 days later, because the first one was so intense, I had no context. And it was in that ceremony with 25 strangers in Brooklyn that I finally surrendered. And like, just like clear as day, it was like, it was blank. He raped you at 17 and left you for dead in the shower. And I had constantly remembered this memory of waking up in a shower with no pants on at a high school party. But I thought it was a nightmare. Like, it didn't have anything connected to it. But as soon as that came up, it was like, what? And then it was like, and that's why you dated blank. So an even like more tragic part of trauma is that when you experience it, because it becomes part of your psyche and subconscious, so often it creates habits, patterns, limiting beliefs that like become your part of your story. And because this was, part of my story at 17, I ended up dating so many people that were literally doppelgangers of perpetrators from my past, because that's what my body remembered. So imagine 33 years old, life seems pretty groovy, gravy, externally at least, your whole life. And then all of a sudden you turn on a movie and one scene into the next scene is more violence. And you realize that like that girl in the movie, that girl was me. So it wasn't rape at 17. It was rape at 13, rape at 6, rape at 12, rape at 21, rape in college. Because the inception of this was when I was very young, at a sleepover, very young age. I dissociated from my body when I was young, and these experiences followed me until I was an adult. So when I say I was served, we're only served what we can handle. I also say that, we are strong enough to carry it and also soft enough to let it go. But that's a choice. So if you're listening to this and you've experienced anything, in any which way, big T, small t, like you've been given this so you can alchemize it from pain to power into pleasure to reclaim your life. And you are the only one that can choose to let it go.
I want to just acknowledge what you just shared so beautifully in your power. And I'm so sorry that you had those experiences. I'm sorry that anybody would feel entitled to do anything like that to anyone, let alone be it you. But you just gave so many people listening to this permission to heal and to step back into their power. And for so many people that are in the suffering and in the struggle and feel the victimization of life's experience, the word pleasure doesn't even come up. And I love that you associated the word pleasure to tasting food and, to smell and to living your life. And it's not just tied to what so many people refer to pleasure as, which would be, a form of intimacy. I think you're just an incredible human being. And I would love to shift a little into the work that you're doing and how you're helping people heal. Speak into a little bit about how somebody that's listening to this episode that maybe disassociates with their body, maybe they have disassociated with a trauma. It doesn't have to necessarily be a sexual trauma, but how could you support them in at least identifying that there is something so they can plant the seed to create the gap so they can start doing the inner work? And then what kind of work do you offer and how do you help people?
So I believe that we're all here to come back to love, a return to love. And when I think about like the birthing process, and I have not had children yet, but when a child is born, they are like cooed upon because they're just love. They don't have a resume. They don't have a background. We are born with love, in love. But, these traumas or experiences or anything happens and we become fragmented and separated from our heart, from our birthright. So my work is to bring people back to love. And I believe the only way to love ourselves is to learn ourselves. So learning why we don't love ourselves, learning, what those limiting beliefs are, what the traumas are, what the stories are, and then what the habits and coping mechanisms we've accumulated to numb ourselves from the feelings, from the experiences. So we have to look at, learn the limiting beliefs, the stories, the traumas, and then we have to learn how we numb them. So drinking, eating, sexting, scrolling, swiping, texting, working out, whatever it is we do so we don't have to feel. So it's interesting. I say, I teach people how to love themselves. Well, the secret is to love yourself. You got to really look at why you don't. So the work is really, it's challenging in a sense that I push you, right? But I believe once you're pushed there, once you get a taste of it, I wanted more, right? And so there's all different tools. There are psychedelics that can pull out of subconscious. There are daily practices to integrate, like meditation to clear the mind, journaling to open the heart, prayer to connect to something greater, to allow yourself to be held so you don't have to do it alone, and then movement practice to get back in your body. So what I do is quite layered, because when you're willing to learn yourself, to love yourself, you have to bring it into every part of your life. Like when I say the food tastes different when you love yourself, you learn how to feed yourself. You learn how to nourish yourself with food, with people, with movement, with work, with everything that you do. And it's life work. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not an approach of just fix this one part. It's the willingness to set aside all expectation of what you thought was and open up to what is. And it's a long process. But I say to everything, it isn't easy. It doesn't have to be so hard. It's the willingness to live. It's the desire to bring yourself back to life.
I love that when you described it on your website, that you said you had to lose yourself to love yourself. Speak a little bit about what you mean when you say love yourself. I think so many people get stuck saying, well, I do love myself, but they don't understand the meaning of the word, and at least not in the context that you're teaching.
I believe so many of us adapt to conditional love because that's what we find familiar. So I'll love myself when I have this much money in the bank, when I have this body, when I meet this person. And oftentimes that storyline isn't even ours. It's what we've grown up thinking, that, if I'm successful, my mom will love me. If I get married, my dad will be happy, whatever it is. And back to this analogy of the newborn, who are you without all this stuff? Both the story and the things, the external. Because again, like I said in my story, and what so many people experienced in COVID, or, when all the stuff is suddenly just taken, ripped, whatever, gone, frozen, pandemic, whatever, it's who are you now? Or when, you're in a relationship and all of a sudden it's I want a divorce, or the best job and now it's gone. We've defined ourselves so deeply by all of this external stuff that we don't know who we are. So when I say to learn to love yourself, learn yourself, who are you? Who are you? How do you speak to yourself? How do you see yourself when you look in the mirror? And it's even beyond, Rudy, loving yourself. I believe it's choosing yourself. So I have a silly little exercise. I keep it on my bathroom mirror. Every day I wake up, it says, I love you and I choose you, and I sign and I date it. I see myself in the mirror when I do this, because, you can love yourself maybe unconditionally, or maybe when you're skinny or whatever else, or when you get the promotion. But choosing you as a daily practice is so, so different, so profound, and so beautiful. So that love piece, love is an interesting word. I don't even think it's a feeling, it's a knowing, it's a trusting. And only something that you can feel and experience from within.
I believe that we are love and we come from love. And at any time when we're acting, in accordance with love, we're being our highest and greatest selves. And that if we are acting in anything other than love, which could be frustration, resentment, anxiety, anger, hatred, whatever, then we are diminishing our capacity to be who we are. And I love so much that you teach people to love themselves. I was challenged to do an exercise at one point in time. This was years ago. I was going through a program and they said, spend 5 minutes naked by yourself in a mirror. And I couldn't even make a minute. I was like, that was the most uncomfortable minute of my life, to just be able to look at myself. And the challenge was keep going back, day after day, like after your shower or whatever, until eventually you get to the 5 minutes. And it was the most beautiful experience, because at the end of it, you start to look at yourself. Well, let me back it up. In the very beginning, for the first minute, you're like, well, I'm too short, or I'm too hairy, or I don't have big muscles, and you look at all the things that are wrong with yourself. And you say things to yourself that you would never say to somebody else. But yet we say them to ourselves all the time. But over time, when you get in front of that mirror and you break through the 1 minute and you get to the 2 minute and then the 3 minute mark, you start finding things that you love about you. And then all of a sudden, that inner voice that was so mean just kind of dissolves. It goes away, and you start to form a beautiful relationship. I've openly shared that I was in my 40s, 42 years old, when I fell in love with myself. Now, let me repeat that. I'm a man in his 40s, and the first time I fell in love with myself, I was 42 years old. I'd already been in a loving relationship for over 10 years with somebody who adores me, sees me, values me, appreciates me, but I didn't see me, love me, value, and appreciate me at that level. And it was the most beautiful, freeing, and exhilarating experience to just unconditionally love me, right or wrong, good or bad, love me. And I challenge everybody to learn how to love themselves. So I would love to ask you to share a little bit, because you talk about having this psychedelic experience that was the gateway for you to go through your healing. And for so many people, they hear the word psychedelics and they think, oh, it's drugs and it's bad. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about the experience, the growth that you had, and maybe just, again, planting the seed of the possibility of doing this work. And is this something that you offer specifically?
Yes. And first, I want to say, it is so profound that you fell in love with yourself at whatever age, because I honestly believe that that is the greatest gift we can ever give ourselves. And I believe it is the most common gift that is never given. Mm-hmm. So like literally, like, amen to you. That is, and it's so beautiful as a man. I think that I seek in my partnership, meeting a man who honors that both in me, we reflect it in each other. And so yes, unbelievable. That said, plant medicine, psychedelics, plant medicine, they are tools. So I think so often we want to place value on this thing that like saved our life. And I believe that like only we can save our lives. So plant medicine, psychedelics, they are an incredible tool to access the subconscious, that which we so often cannot get to because our brain either protects us or we're so afraid to dig into the spaces and places that feel dark. And so I'm so grateful that I found these tools, but I want to just make mention that the work begins when the journey ends, like the specific medicine journey. Because what happens is if you're going to dig into, as I did, and like upload these, what was subconscious memory, you then have to integrate them in your daily life. So I do work pre-integration, like pre-journey, post-integration, post-journey, and I actually do hold the space for the journeys. It's profound work because to me, it brings you more in touch with what is love, what is source, what is universe, what is you. But for many of us, that which we cannot access because we've armored ourselves. Like we've taken on these shapes and these forms to protect ourselves, because being so wide open in this space of love, you're surrendered to, the penetrability of like the external. But what I've learned on the journey too is that like you have then build proper boundaries so you don't let it all in. It can't hurt you. It can't hurt me any longer, whatever comes to me. So psychedelics, it opens the mind, it opens the body, it opens the heart to that which might not be like clear to the conscious eye. You start to learn and sit with your habits and your patterns that you don't necessarily see. You start to operate from a different almost dimension because you've been privy to your operating system that isn't clear to you on a day-to-day because you're just doing your thing day to day. So sure, psychedelics, they're not yet legal. Ketamine is legal. Psilocybin is decriminalized in some states. MDMA should be legalized for, victims or, experiences of PTSD by August. And I would say if you're interested in this work, a really great place to start is with a well-experienced guide in a very safe setting, because the purpose is that you can surrender. You can surrender the grip on, the fear of whatever it is that you've already lived in fear from. You just might not know what it is. And it might be just, it doesn't have to be these big T things, and it can be. Why MDMA has been so profound, particularly why it's in stage 3 trials for PTSD. They've done a big study on veterans. So MDMA boosts serotonin and dopamine in your brain. Your body feels safe to go revisit painful memories. And in that space, you get to rewrite the story. You get to claim your sovereignty around what happened and realize that, it, as much as it was to you, it was for you. And now you can start to live again, as opposed to exist on this autopilot of everything's happening to me. To start to open.
What do you say to someone that is avoiding feeling and they're curious in doing some of the healing work, regardless of which modality you think is best suited for them, but they are cautious or hesitant because they don't know what's going to open up and they don't want to feel the pain on the other end of what that experience might bring? What would be your support or advice to encourage somebody to go through the process?
One of my favorite Sufi poets and spirit guide, Rumi, says, "The wound is where the light enters." And I've found that until you're willing to face that dark, you can't free your light. And the fight that, is within, there is so much flow and so much abundance. And you can sort of you can feel it, you can identify, you can feel the stuck places in your body. And so if someone comes to me in fear, I want to hold them in that fear because I know what that feels like. And behind the fear, or in tandem with the fear, is so much courage and so much love. And I believe the only thing that overcomes fear, and I like to say pain, is love. So I want to fuel that fear and pain with so much love so that they feel so held, that they can release whatever is blocking them from that love, from that which they are.
I think that the work that you do is so personal to the individual that I don't want to sit on this side of the table and say I'm for and or against for anyone else's journey, but for my journey, and I would encourage everybody to answer that question for themselves. I think it's so important that they work with somebody that has the energy that you are portraying in this interview alone. Just, I feel safe talking to you about what you're talking about. I feel like I'm in the presence of somebody who has a nurturing heart and is holding my highest and greatest potential for the outcome of whatever that experience might be. And I think so many people don't do enough due diligence when they're looking for anyone, whether that be a coach to come into their company to support them to grow, or whether, that be somebody who's going to be working with them and reminding them of the divinity that is flowing to them and through them. You emanated so beautifully. And I felt really compelled to share that because I want anyone that's listening, that's curious, that's going to, at the end of this, look into the show notes and find your information and go and do work with you, that they're present to not just the options that are available to them through people, but to how do those people feel. And so often we will hire someone or look to hire somebody without doing the due diligence to see, do they align with who we are as people, and what are their interests and how do they show up out in the world. And you do it so beautifully. I knew that would be the case in just getting to know you through your platform, but to have the opportunity to have the conversation with you today has just been such a gift. I'm so honored and so grateful to have you and to have had the opportunity to share this message. Could you share with us a little, please? How do people find you? What steps do you recommend? How do we get started in doing this healing work?
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that. I want to just speak to that really quickly because I was there. I was in this pain. I didn't even know how painful it was. Or when I started this journey, I was seeking out from help. I think that when we come from a place of need, we forget how much we know. And so when you're seeking out for help me, yes. But in that need, there has to be an overwhelming no. So when you're vetting someone to hold you, just to give some advice, no one can fix you or save you but you. So as you said, Rudy, to feel held and supported in a container that is loving is the utmost important. When I was starting this path, I found oftentimes I came from such a place of need and wounding that I would seek people out that I was desperate for them to see me because I so badly needed to be seen. And what it did was it blocked my no. KNOW. It blocked my knowing, my highest self. So I didn't feel into like the conversation. Do I feel safe? Do I feel held? It was just like, see me, help me, save me, fix me. And that's from a space of wounding and not getting what, we potentially needed as younger children. So when you are entering this, and if you're interested in working together, feel it out, feel me out, feel it out. But trust that you have what you need. No matter how much pain you're in, you have what you need, especially to make those decisions. That said, people can find me via Instagram, Live Young, at Live Young. Interesting that I was given this name, Olivia Young, and Live Young to me means learn yourself to love yourself. And I really want to build this community based on self-lovers. And liveyoung.co is my website. I have lots of different offers. I do a call, let's chat. And I think for me, what feels so important to be said is like, no matter what you're experiencing, you're not alone. If I was like given one download, because, in my journeys, I sort of had so many inceptions of just like either help me or thank you. And in one iteration, it was like, thank you so much, God, for bringing me here. Like, how can I ever repay you? And the immediate answer was just remind people they're not alone as I've reminded you. So if I have one purpose on this earth, in this plane, it is there is nothing I haven't heard. There is very little I haven't felt or experienced myself. There is no shame in any game. I've either done it all of it. And we hide behind our shame and we hide behind our pain and we harden into doers instead of beers or feelers. And it's so much more fun on the other side.
Oh
Life is meant to be lived and loved and tasted and felt and shared. And yeah, so and I went on this tangent because like I feel your presence so intensely, and I'm so grateful to share this conversation with you because I see you. So thank you.
I see you and thank you. Oh my gosh. You know what? I said we had so many similarities or parallels at least. And so I'll share with you, my daughter carries my favorite name, and that is Liv. And so her name is Olivia and she goes by Liv. And what's so interesting is my wife and I couldn't decide on what name to name her. So because we had two names we really liked, and one was Ali and one was Liv. And if we had two girls, we would have named one Ali and one Liv, but we had a boy first and we were only going to have two children. So our daughter came and we're like, well, we'll give her both names and she can decide. And so for the first 4 years of her life, she was Ali. And everybody knows her as Ali and calls her Ali. And then at around 5 years old, 6 years old, she said, I want to start trying Liv out. And so she started calling herself Liv. And then eventually, at 7 years old, she went to school and said to all the teachers, my name is Liv from now on. And everyone has to call her Liv now. And she's so strong and she's so independent and she's so courageous. And, the energy of the name is so powerful. So when I saw that you're Olivia, but you go by Liv Young on your website, and Liv Young is your brand, I love it. And I cannot wait to show my daughter who you are and what you're doing, and how your namesake at least carries this incredible power and energy. So I have another question that I think our audience is going to be left with today. And I think it's so important to close the loop on this because you shared all of this profound trauma that you had gone through, the I don't even know how to say it without me feeling the tremendous emotion that comes with the words, but rape after rape after rape over the course of your life until eventually you broke the cycle. And you speak into that when you stopped, giving the energy off of see me, that shifted. I would love for you to be able to just bridge, if possible, in a conversation, how do people who have been going through a cycle break that cycle? Because I think that would be such an important catalyst for people to want to reach out to you or somebody like you to say, I'm ready to release this because I no longer want to live the way that I was living. What do you think is a tool or a necessary step that people can take to identify the pattern and then break that pattern?
Oof. Yeah, even your experience in just saying the word, like it never loses its weight. It is, I don't think I even honored that enough. Like hearing it, feeling it, saying it, it's so pungent. And when it's not said, it continues happening. So I want to bring voice to this, which is the answer to your question. I believe it's bringing voice to what has been silenced. So if you've experienced any sort of trauma, assault, rape, your body has been taken, your voice has been taken, I believe the best way to start to re-embody your body, empower your life, is to stop silencing your truth, to take your voice back, to start sharing what's happened to you. And the issue with that is you will be silenced more and you have to continue rising. So as hard as it was for me to walk down this path and keep walking, keep digging deeper to find more pain, and tell myself, whatever you do, don't drop your hands. The hardest part of my journey was actually after I thought I was free. And it was when it was attempted that I was silenced because my story was too painful for others to receive. And it was the first time in my life that I understood why people don't talk. Because my background, I didn't remember anything. And then when I started talking and writing and sharing, I didn't let anyone silence me, but it happened. And I lost my sense of self again. So if you're listening to this and if you've experienced painful experiences, they are yours. And because they are yours, they are true to you. And that is all that matters. And it never gets easier saying the words, and it will never be received openly always, because these are horrors that nobody wants to actually imagine and receive as truth. But until we start using our voices, this cycle will continue happening. So I believe it is our responsibility, even through this cycle of pain, to own it, to break the shame, to break the cycle and rise and say, like, this needs to stop happening because it happened to me and I will no longer allow. And that's through the voice.
Such a beautiful message. I was covered just in chills the entire time you were sharing. I want to plant a seed for everybody in the hopes that this germinates, that in any experience that you've ever had, in any trauma, whether it was somebody cheating on you, whether it was abuse of some kind, or somebody stole something from you, in any story, we have a narrative around how we felt, and we give the power away in that moment unless we ask ourselves for the value, the purpose, and the meaning behind it. And I teach that when we take what has been our pain and we turn it into our purpose, and it doesn't have to be your career, it doesn't have to be your job, but if you use what was your pain and you turn around and you teach it, to me, that's the meaning and the value of life. We come here, we have these life experiences, we live for X amount of years, we meet and touch a number of people. And in every single person's journey, we gain a new level of vantage point, a new level of understanding. And when we turn around and we teach, talk, share based on what was our experience and how we overcame it, and we lessen somebody else's pain, it seems to me, and I'm only speaking for myself now, but it takes away from my past pains. Whenever I help somebody who has worked through sexual abuse or trauma, which is more than 60% of the people I work with in corporate America have suffered sexual abuse or trauma. That's not, a stat globally. That's just my clients. And if I think about that as a microcosm of what's happening out in the world, people don't talk enough. People don't create enough safe space to be able to heal and to grow. But I'm so qualified to help people heal and grow because of the experiences that I've had. And so, Olivia, I just want to say thank you so much for showing up as an incredible human being that you are. I am so proud of the person that you are and that you get to be, and for everybody that you get to support and to help heal and to grow so they can live the most beautiful, robust lives, and they can live in joy and pleasure and taste and smell and live life to the fullest. I love you so much from my
Thank
heart to yours.
you.
Thank you for joining us on the
Thank you
Empowered Life
so much.
podcast.
What a gift. Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody else joining us. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. If anyone that you know could hear this message about talking, about sharing, about healing, please rate, review, subscribe, share this episode to every single person that you think could benefit from it, because there's healing in the process of supporting somebody else in healing. Thank you so much. We love you. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Empowered Life podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.